Hi, and welcome to Shadow School. My name is Matt Sandbank. Today we're going to be making magical unicorns. Now, before we begin this quest, let's go to the Shadow Puppet screen and see what our finished unicorns will end up looking like. Here are the materials you need for this shadow puppet. Alright, for our unicorn, let's start with a broken down piece of cardboard. If you're using something like a cereal box, you'll probably need both halves of these, so you might want to go ahead and break both of them down at the beginning. Now, I will be using a Sharpie marker to make my marks, but you might want to use a pencil because the unicorn can be a little bit complicated. It may involve some, if not erasing, then at least fainter lines so that so you can feel like you're getting exactly the kind of look that you want. For the unicorn, we're going to start with kind of a square, a square, but a square that is kind of rotated a little bit like this. So like that. So a straight up and down square would be like that, but when you draw it, you just rotate it a little bit. My square's not perfect. That's okay. And then put a mark here and here on your square, and then draw like a little rectangle from there, about like that, give or take. These are going to be the eyes of the unicorn. We're going to kind of we're going to make a slope that goes from here down to here like this. We're going to keep that going, and then when we get to the end, we're going to just rise up a little bit and out and do the same thing down here, come in just a little bit, and then we're going to kind of give that a rounded clearance there. That's the back of the kind of the cheek of the unicorn. And then we're going to go back this way, and then from here we're going to add an oval going this way. This is the horse's neck. I said horse. Of course, I meant unicorn. All right, now you'll notice this is a very busy drawing, and there's a lot of details here. Remember, the audience won't see anything actually on the inside. They just see the silhouette. So what we're focused on is the outside shape here. Let's add an ear, and of course, it's not a unicorn without a horn. There we go. And let's add a nice mane here, just kind of a jagged edge that goes down like this, and then that will join right there. It's a somewhat complicated puppet, but you can do it. And shadow puppetry is a forgiving art form, so don't be afraid. Also, if you make a few mistakes, just use more cardboard. Cardboard's easy to find and not terribly expensive. Most of my puppets, I would draw all the pieces first, but for this unicorn, I'm actually going to cut this piece out because with this puppet, it's difficult, especially since this head is so big. It's difficult to size out the rest of the puppet unless you can hold this piece up to the other ones. So I'm cutting this out so that I can make sure my puppet is in good proportion. I'm taking slow cuts. I'm cutting with the back end of the scissors, the end of the scissors that's closest to my hand. Because the back of the scissors are closer to your fingers, you have a lot more control if you cut with this part of the scissor than with this part. And I like to just think of myself as taking my scissors for a little walk around the outside of this shape. I'm using my left hand this whole time to help guide the cardboard. Gives me a lot more control. I felt like I made that cheek a little bit too big, so I just cut a tiny bit off. When you're starting out making puppets, you may want to stick with your lines, but as you do it a bit longer, you can kind of edit as you cut, which is what I do. Okay, so we have the head of the unicorn. Now it's time for us to make the second body part. That's why I like to cut this out, is I like to place this here, and then the second body part is based on a very large oval from about the middle of this part of the mane to probably about here in the neck. So we're going to do a big oval that joins those together. That may end up being too big. We can always cut down a little bit if we want. The front hooves start out as kind of stick legs like this and like this. Add a hoof, kind of a half oval, then a kind of a rounded edge, half oval, rounded edge, and then add some meat to those bones like so. Remember, if you draw big, you can always cut away. If you draw too small and cut too small, it's going to be difficult. And I can already tell that's those legs are going to be too small. So let's add a larger hoof, quite a larger hoof there. We'll end up cutting that away, I bet, a little bit. I think that looks a little bit better and more in proportion. So kind of put our joined spot right there and then complete that oval. And then we're going to cut this piece out. Same technique for cutting, back end of the scissors, guiding with my left hand. And we can go real fast around the simple shapes like this big oval. I'll cut part of that off just so I can reach in easier. I always like to break down my puppet into manageable chunks whenever I can. Things get tricky with puppets like this unicorn when we get into the narrow spaces, so be careful there. We're going to end up reinforcing these legs later on, but that comes later, kind of when we're working with our tape to add the rods to the puppet. Okay. So we just take a quick look at that. That looks like it's pretty good in proportion. You know, I feel like this oval's a little bit big, so I'm going to cut maybe just a chunk of it off like that. It's not a problem to edit for size, and I think the top is actually looking a little bit big too, so let me cut a little bit off the top like that. That to me looks a little bit better. Okay, now our last piece of the unicorn, and it looks like I've actually used up all my cardboard, so I really need 3 pieces of cardboard today. So let me take this one. I think this will be big enough, even though it's not my standard cereal box. In the interest of time, I'm not going to cut down every part of my puppet, but often it helps to cut the folds off too, because if you accidentally draw over the fold, you'll have a floppy puppet, which is no good. All right, we're going to need some height here, so we're going to turn that piece of cardboard this way. Now this one starts with a circle, so maybe draw most of your circle like that, then complete that circle. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And then from the top of the circle, we're going to add a tail, kind of curves up and then bends back in, and then some zigzag lines. And then the hooves of the back hooves, we can actually use these front ones to trace, but make sure they're turned backwards, because the back legs of the unicorn want to be oriented this way. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think that'll end up looking okay. Now, when you trace out pieces, they end up being just a touch bigger, so when I cut, I'm going to cut on the inside of that line. Just a little bit on the inside there. For zigzags, sometimes I like to cut along the edge of the zigzags and then just do them one at a time, like this. Sometimes I'll try to cut them all out in one, but this is usually a slightly more precise way, less likely to rip your puppet. Okay. And we kind of do a rough check. This back hoof is kind of bothering me, so I'm gonna cut it a little bit smaller, give it a little more definition. There, I think that looks a little better. Okay, we're gonna need a hole right here and right here, and then we take our hole puncher to punch out all of the holes. Let's bring back the head of the unicorn here. We'll do the neck. That's a functional hole. That's where the puppet pieces are going to connect. These eyes are ornamental or design holes. That's where the eyes are going to go. So we need to punch them out, but remember not to, attach anything there. Now, sometimes I can't reach, you can see I can't quite reach that place where the puppet needs to join together. What we're going to do is we're going to do a little cut that goes almost to that line and a little above it. We can fold the cardboard just a little bit in order to get our hole punch kind of in there. Takes a little finagling. Try not to rip your puppet any more than is necessary, but we're going to do like some minor puppet surgery here to fix it in the end. Hold on 1 second there. There we go. Okay. So we got pretty close to that line, and we just take some tape, put it down on top, then fold it over on the bottom, and that'll hold that piece together. It'll be just fine. I think we probably need to do the same thing on the back end of the puppet. Cut mostly to that dot. Separate those pieces of cardboard so we can slide this hole punch in. Get it mostly in there. Oh, look at that, right, or almost right on the dot. And then do some puppet surgery with your tape, like that and like that. And I think we can actually reach this dot. Yes, we can reach close enough there that we don't have to do the cutting there. Okay, now we just join the pieces of our puppet together. Let's line them up how they're gonna end up looking. That looks like a slightly chunky unicorn, but that's cute, I think. So we are going to drop the brad through both of the holes we punched out, pinch it down and flip it over, and then fold down the tabs. We're going to do the same thing on the back. Drop the brad through, pinch, fold over, bend down the tabs. Now we're very close. We only need to do two things. We need to add rods and then reinforce these hooves, or legs rather. Okay, so my rods are going to be these bendy straws. If the puppet is flat on the work surface, the straws will be sticking straight up in the air when we attach them. We want to attach one on the head, and I like to make sure the bend of the straw is oriented so it's close to the joint. Not like this. That's where the bend is kind of farther away. You want the bend to be closer to the joint. We're going to lay down two pieces of tape there. This is a larger puppet, so you want to make sure those rods are really secure. Fold that over. We're going to do the same thing on the back end of the unicorn. Bend of the straw is close to the joint of the straw, the joint of the puppet, I'm sorry, because that gives us a better sense of control with the puppet. Two pieces of tape will do the trick. Now, because this puppet runs, and because these legs have this narrow space in the middle, a lot of times the puppet will want to get caught on itself. And one way we can prevent that is by adding some tape in between these, just to reinforce that. It'll make those legs less likely to break, and it'll make the puppet smoother in how it runs. So we put the tape on one side, we have to flip it over because We don't want that sticky tape to get stuck to the Shadow Puppet screen when we're trying to operate this unicorn. So we have kind of both sides are reinforced and the sticky side is not exposed. And there you have a magical unicorn. Now what I think will make this puppet even more magical is a splash of color. Here's what I did with my puppet. You could do the same thing with yours. I took my hole puncher and I punched a lot of holes, first in the mane, then in the tail, and then I decided to put a few on the horn. I covered those holes with a little bit of tape, and then I colored those spots in the tape with some of my favorite colors, and I ended up with something that I think looks very magical like this. Thank you so much for joining me today for Shadow School. My name is Matt Sandbank. Don't forget to click like and subscribe if you enjoy making puppets with me in videos just like this one. Thanks so much. Bye.